All right. This week on the Vinyl Guide, I am speaking with Mike Doughty, a songwriter, perhaps, I don't know, troubadour. Would you identify yourself as a troubadour, Mike?
I'll take Troubadour. I'll
Okay.
take pretty much anything. Troubadour's fine. Let's go with Troubadour.
All right. So, Mike, your work is on very heavy rotation on my turntable in my car.
Oh,
And
dope.
to the audience out there who may know of Mike from his previous band Soul Coughing, which is like 20 years ago,
Yeah.
if you know him from there, only from there, then you're missing out on a lot of really great music. He's also a bit of a poet. He's authored a remarkable book called The Book of Drugs, which is exactly what it sounds like. And he's
Yes.
got his latest album, The Heart Watches While the Brain Burns, is out this week. And again, it seems to be another leap forward for a guy who's had a lifetime of leaps. Uh,
Oh, well, thank you.
Mike, how do you feel this new LP is compared to your last studio effort?
Oh, I think it's better. I don't know. There were fewer guests on it, which working with the guests on Stellar Motel was fantastic. I think it's nice and it's got a nice little sort of narrative arc, so to speak. I like how it ends. It ends on sort of like a noise thing on the it kind of fades out on this kind of cascading noise thing, which I feel is fine. It's there's drama to it.
Mike, in the last really 20 years, you've lived in this duality of people who know you from the work in Soul Coughing and then the people who know you primarily for your solo work. Do you still have those, that duality, or has the audience largely switched over to know you for your more current work?
Well, I think the audience is sort of evenly divided between people who know about what I'm doing starting from Soul Coughing and people that know it starting from Haughty Melodic, which was my first sort of, I don't know, major solo album. Um, but a lot of those people have worked backwards and listen to Soul Coughing. And the Soul Coughing people have worked forward. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
certainly for about a decade, I didn't, I stayed away from Soul Coughing songs, because wanted to basically have a career beyond it, and I wanted to, basically, if I hadn't have avoided those songs, I'd be stuck playing just them forever. So really, the fact that I have a solo world at all is based on that interruption.
Like you said, there was a period of over a decade where you really kept all that in the past. But then
Yeah.
recently, more recently, you started revisiting it and doing some of it live, and even having a couple of records that are just that old stuff, but reimagined. What was the decision like to be able to do that?
Well, I wanted to do a tour that was all Soul Coughing songs. I just wanted to like open up the hood on that stuff and do some stuff with it. And I talked to my agent about it, and he was like, "Well, like we could do this tour, but it would be better if we were doing it behind a record, just for publicity purposes." And I was like, "Well, I could sort of do the Soul Coughing songs as I had intended. Intended's a weird word, that related to the way." Related to what I was listening to when I wrote it,
Mhm.
because they're very sort of the 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 newer versions of those songs are very kind of straight down the middle hip hop and house music, and it's not a live band for the most part. There's a live bass player. Well, there's a live drummer on there, but it's very much mechanized.
Mhm.
The new Soul Coughing album, but it really took off, and I did a crowdfunding campaign for it. And this thing that I had sort of designed as just a flyer for the gigs, as they say, um, became kind of this big to do.
And in reading your book, the relationship of your former bandmates is it sounds like it's poison. You'd almost akin it to like an emotional abuse sort of situation. Was there the view of, okay, well, these were the songs that I created. This is what I wanted to see, or this is how I see them now. So it's almost kind of going back and uncompromising that material.
To a certain extent, that's very much correct. Although, I recognize that for the most part, people, the first time they hear something, they that's the way it's got to be for them forever, and you're not going to be able to impinge on their memories. There's a couple on there that I really think are just done. I feel I hit them out of the park, and that Sleepless and How Many Cans. Those were both songs that were meant to be like kind of louder, groovier songs that didn't end up that way in the collaborative situation of the band. So those are the recordings on that album that I'm of which I am the most proud. And the other stuff I did on there, because they were the big soul coughing songs, and to do this reimagined soul coughing thing, I had to include them. And I like the versions just fine, but I think those two songs, Sleepless and How Many Cans, are the ones that I would hold out to a soul coughing fan and be like, look, this is the real stuff. More so than the other recordings on that album.
Yeah, sonically, those two records are gorgeous as well. So yeah,
well
done. Do you think you will revisit them again in maybe another 10, 20 years with different eyes?
Oh, well, now I do them semi-regularly. I do a fair amount of soul coughing songs, so they coexist nicely in the sort of feed of my set list. But I'm on my 9th solo album, 12th album overall, so there's a lot of stuff to choose from. I mean, a lot of songs.
And it's not just your albums, but you also do this song a week on, I think, Patreon.
Yes, that's right.
It sounds quite prolific. How many songs do you create on a given week?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I've had weeks where I do one a day. I did a week about a year ago, where it was the week of 5 sad songs, where I wrote 5 songs with the word sad in the title, wrote one every day for every weekday, and wrote it, recorded it, and put it up. And I was on the road at the time, so I would write it in a dressing room and go record it in a stairwell for some nice analog reverb.
And you seem to be a bit of a lo-fi guy in terms of your record. You put yourself out there. Facebook, you always have just Facebook Live. I'm just going to be jamming, that sort of thing. Do you have any recording equipment that you take on the road, or is it just whatever's there, that's what you use?
For stuff that I did in a stairwell, I just have like a decent Shure stereo mic that I put on my iPhone. But at home, I have just like the Focusrite. I don't even know what it's called. It's the Scarlett 2i2 is what it's called, I think. And then I have a Heil mic, and an XLR cable, and that's the whole law.
That's the studio.
Yep.
Now, and how do you make a decision that this song is going to go on the Patreon site and this other song is going to go on the next Mike Doughty album?
Well, right now everything's going on Patreon, and presumably a lot of this stuff will end up being reconfigured, or even just put in its current form on. By current form, it would be recorded again, but in its current arrangement without like the lyrics or the chorus being altered, on a regular album. So it really is. It's just very process oriented, the Patreon feed. But I don't think there's any such thing as a demo. I think a recording is a recording is a recording.
But you could use the information on Patreon to see, this song is clearly the one that is a favorite with the listeners. Did you get that sort of?
I haven't been looking at the data on the Patreon so much. I mean, I know uh, when people are reacting to it, you get messages about it and stuff. But you know, I don't think I would do that sort of like sort of polling kind of a vibe unless it was something that was like far and away what everybody absolutely loved.
Yeah, I don't mean to turn this into a data-driven exercise, but
No, that's
but you could
cool.
actually see, yeah. But it'd be interesting to see, wow, if there's a standout that maybe you didn't even may not have recognized early on.
Yeah,
So
truly. I mean, yeah.
okay, and with Patreon, I guess subscribers they can sign up for $5 or $10 a month, or even more if they want, and then
Yeah, it's $5 a month, and you get a new song, like totally new, recorded, written, 100% new song, and then a live song from you know from any time in the past in the century, really. So it's two songs a week.
okay. And when you write the songs, what typically comes first? Is it a guitar riff, a line? Is it a combination?
Yeah, it's a combination. I mean, there's definitely a process for each of those things, in the sense that I'm always keeping a notebook with sort of fragments of lyrics in it and doing journaling and things, as well as like the process of sitting down with a guitar and writing riffs and seeing what melodies kind of surf those riffs best. And then there's another process that is sort of the discipline process of taking things and trying to mix and match melodies and guitar parts with lyrics.
Do you find yourself throughout the day coming upon a really interesting line and then building a song around that?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like I write it down or put it on my phone. Yeah. I mean, you hear them, you see them, you think of them. It's just, sort of go out into the world with your eyes and ears open.
You tend to be quite inspired from all sorts of different sources, yeah?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
What is it in the world that really drives you in that regard?
Oh, I mean, you can find stuff anywhere. I mean, the Light Will Keep Your Heart Beating in the Future, which was the single on the last album. That was, I mean, it's altered, but it was essentially a headline on one of those Metro AM sort of free mini newspapers they give out on the subway in New York. It was like, in the future, light will keep your heart beating, or so. It was in different syntax, but I literally saw it across the aisle. Some guy was reading it, and I wrote it down.
So inspiration could come from just about anywhere.
Oh yeah.
What is some of the more rich veins that you've tapped into in your songwriting history?
Certainly newspaper headlines, things you overhear, things that kind of pop out when you're journaling that you're not even necessarily thinking about, movies. I mean, really everywhere. I mean, it's really just a question of paying attention to what's happening around you.
Are you a disciplined journalist?
Yeah, sometimes I am, sometimes not. I mean, there's people that are very into the morning pages thing, where you get up and you do a free write of 2 pages as kind of like the appetizer of your creative day. But I do that from time to time, but I'm not. I'm not that disciplined.
So there's no particular exercises you go through each day and find that it
Not
creates your.
necessarily. I mean, it's good. I have an old typewriter, a Selectric 2, like an electric typewriter from the early 70s. And it's fun to journal on that and just, put a sheet of paper in and just start typing stuff. And it's very useful to do that kind of thing in terms of getting your head in the right place. But for the most part, it's just remembering to sit down with the guitar. And if I'm playing, I'll find something interesting and just end up repeating it, and usually either recording the riff or doing like a full-on recording style recording of it.
So picking up the guitar and noodling for 10, 15
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, just
Do you have a large backlog of songs, or do you pretty much conscious streaming? It's as soon as it's in a formable shape, it's out there.
I like to get it out quickly. In fact, that's really the benefit of doing the Patreon. I should go ahead and say that it's patreon.com/Doughty, Doughty. But that's the beauty of the Patreon thing is you got to finish them. Like you got to get it and get it done. And to me, that is one of the most important things about being creative is just finish what you start. Even if you're finishing it in a way that you find, like I could have done that better, just have it done. You can always go back and retool it, but don't leave things half completed. Complete the thought. And the thing about the Patreon feed is, I really have to finish stuff and have it be in a form that I'm proud of and like the recording, and I all have to do all that stuff within a week. Now sometimes I get backlogged and they get sort of dispatched week by week. That they're not necessarily the week that it was written, but sometimes it's like I get up and record something in a hotel room just on that little Shure mic, and it's up on Patreon within hours.
Do you ever revisit the things that you're uploading on Patreon and saying, oh, I wish I didn't upload that?
Oh no, I mean I can be fairly self-critical, and certainly there's always stuff I want to revise, but that it's very much about the momentary impulse. Mm-hmm. And that's the crux of it. So of course there's going to be stuff that I'm like, I could have done that better, but then I'll just do it better the next time.
Is there much Monday morning quarterbacking with your material? I mean, either on Patreon or your recorded works?
Not that much, actually, to be honest. I mean, people always say that kind of stuff to you all the time, and usually it's like, well, you really should go make your own art rather than expecting me to make the art you like if you have such specific needs. But no, it's not too bad. People know that I'm weird at this point, and they know that I'm gonna do whatever I'm gonna do.
You seem to be very, very disciplined in this regard, and very driven in terms of songwriting and doing the work that it takes to do what you do. It seems to be a discipline that not a lot of people have. Are you good to yourself?
Am I good to myself in the sense of am I like cracking the whip over myself and beating myself up?
Are you a good boss to yourself?
I'm a decent boss to myself. What I do is I try and arrange deadlines, so I have to finish stuff. And you have to sort of respect that dreamy kind of inspirational phase of things, but like. The brilliance of the Patreon feed is like there's a deadline looming and I got to get something done.
So you work best with a deadline, a sense of urgency.
I work absolutely, and when things are, people are like, take as much time as you want and whatever. I'll like do nothing until they start getting nervous about it. Like I just need some kind of pressure to really finish stuff.
And is that different from the days when, for instance, Haughty Melodic, was that a different style, a different set of disciplines at that time?
No, it was pretty much the same stuff. I mean, you a lot of what you impose on yourself is artificial, but it's like I want this to be done by this session, or I want to make this recording and have it, give it to such and such by Tuesday, or whatever it is that you use to trick yourself into being productive.
When you take a work like Haughty Melodic, where the songs sound, I won't say similar, but they're in a similar vein, a similar set of instruments throughout the album.
Sure, yeah.
And then
absolutely.
You have something like Stellar Motel, where you'll have a rap song and then a song with banjos or something. It's very, very diverse. How is that writing process different between the two styles of project?
Well, that very much reflects the producers, and I put a lot of trust in a producer and collaborate very closely with them when I work with them. Hottie Melodic was Dan Wilson, and it's very much his taste and his style kind of fusing with mine. You almost sort of form like a band of two, like a mini band with a producer. And that's so Hottie Melodic is very much a collaboration with Dan. And Stellar Motel is very much a collaboration with Good Goose, who's a young Brooklyn kid who I, found through friends.
How do you choose a producer?
It's just a vibe, really. I mean, you sort of feel somebody's simpatico-ness with whatever you're trying to do. When you talk to them about stuff, you really kind of dig where their head is at, that kind of a thing.
And what is the relation? You said it's like a band of two, but what do you look for in a producer? Ideas, somebody to help drive you to a different level? What would you consider simpatico as a friend and simpatico as a producer?
Well, they do things that surprise me, and they have suggestions that surprise me, and I'm interested in whatever their next idea is, almost on like a fan level. Like I'm intrigued and excited the way I would be if I was just listening to music.
Are you looking for people who have common taste, or someone who will push you?
Definitely looking for somebody that'll push me. It is interesting when there is like a taste gap between two people collaborating on something, because that's when you find really interesting things. When you're trying to do something and sort of come over to what they like, and they're trying to come over to what you like. With Dan Wilson, it was all about chords. Like, he wanted a lot of chords, and I was like, I'm good with one chord. So there was an extent to which I had to let go of my kind of drone impulse, and he had to let go of his sort of Beatlesque, like sort of ornate chordal complexity habit.
When you're speaking with producers, are you able to speak in musical terms, in terms of the notes and the structure, or is it more of a vibe, more emotionally?
It's more of a vibe thing. I mean, you need to know what the chords are, but I honestly, I'm not a theory guy, and I've just always worked with people that were more competent with theory than I was, and I make intuitive choices and then do my best to convey them verbally, which is always interesting.
Who are other musicians that you really look up to, you really admire in terms of their career and the type of work that they do?
Oh, I mean, I think Jose Gonzalez is really the guy. I just think he's absolutely amazing. Yeah. I love hip hop producers, like guys like Mike Will Made It, that have, they have their own sort of little factory going, and they can, go to different artists, but they're definitely bringing their vibe to another vocalist. And I love that general thing about rap music and pop music, where you can have somebody on your song that completely does what they do. It's not like they're singing a harmony with you. You can have people with real featured territory that's their territory on a recording.
Is there anyone in particular you would like to work with in the future?
I mean, Mike Will Made It is the guy right now. I'd love to work with that guy.
Mm-hmm. All right. So a message going out to Mike Will Made It.
Yeah, man.
Call Mike Doughty.
You know who I'd love to work with is the pop producer Max Martin. I would love to do something where he wrote the melody and I wrote the lyrics, because his melodies are so beautiful, just so elegantly built and so dramatic. I would love to do something where he wrote the melodies and I wrote the weird words that I write to go with it.
Would you consider yourself a poet?
Oh, I mean, no. I mean, I published a book of poetry. I studied poetry. You know, I'm a huge fan. But I think it's a fundamentally different discipline. And a lot of the poets that I really love are guys like Jack Gilbert. And they're guys who are like 80 and they've been doing it for 60 years. And there's not a lot of money in it. So they're very dedicated to this, very monastic kind of a craft. And, I work in popular music and it is just not that monastic.
A lot of your music contains these lines that are very deep and meaningful and can be multi-layered. How long do you spend crafting those words?
They kind of just pop out, and it's a very intuitive process. It's not like I sit down to write something that's got a shade of something else in it or a reference to something else in it. At this point I know my own style very well, so I can be like, oh yeah, I'm doing that thing that I do. I'm doing that thing with the vowels that I always do, or whatever it is. But a lot of times I just come upon it.
Do you ever write things for other people?
I'd like to. Dan Wilson actually is doing, we wrote it together. He's doing an album of songs that he co-wrote with people, and he's doing Your Misfortune on that. I co-write with people when I can. I haven't really had anything come out though. But that process of sitting down with somebody and, melding your creativity together is fascinating and inspiring always.
I'm assuming that you have a community of songwriting peers that you're at least familiar with. Do you communicate or share information with that group?
Well, no, I'm pretty isolated in terms of like scene type stuff. I moved to Memphis about a year and a half ago, and it's a small town with amazing musicians in it, and of course, this immense musical history. But one of the nice aspects is you really can know everybody. And, if you don't know everybody, you know somebody who knows them. So, like I'm friends with Boo Mitchell, who is the son of Willie Mitchell, who produced Al Green's records and is still running Royal Studios in Memphis. I'm friends with the drummer in this great Memphis post-punk band called Knots. Dave Cowser, who's kind of like a legend in Memphis. You just know, you get to know everybody.
But you wouldn't say, oh, I thought of this line, but it doesn't really fit into my stuff. This is more of a Steve Poltz sort of thing. Steve, do you want this?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't really had that experience of like a circle of writers that kind of share material around.
Okay. Is that something in the future, or are you just not interested in it?
I'd love to do it. I mean, those things are sort of a question of the relationships that happen, not, they're not premeditated, I don't think.
And if one of those opportunities was to come up, is there a lot of business red tape to be able to cut through to make that happen, or is it?
You can always figure that stuff out later. Just don't ask your manager about it beforehand. It's for real. Like I had an Elliott Smith vocal that he recorded in 1997 with the intention of giving it to me to chop up. He came down to the studio to just give me fragments of stuff that I could, cut and paste and turn into samples and sort of deploy over tracks. And I didn't do anything with it until last year or 2 years ago. And, I did these 3 tracks and I put them up online, and, they were briefly infamous, but that's the kind of thing that like I did not want to go to the lawyers and talk about because they would make it very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was I just put it up online and I publicized it. Just got some email addresses from a publicist and sort of sent anonymous emails out to editors and was like, look, this is a thing. And, you know, after the fact, I spoke to Elliot's archivist, Larry Crane, and it was a much easier conversation than like trying to arrange it beforehand.
It's easier to beg for forgiveness than ask permission.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't really have to beg him for forgiveness. But you know, because the more officially you try and do stuff, the more people have to get brought into the process, and it just slows you down. So if I had a song run with somebody and there was some kind of, you know, sort of obvious difficulty related to it, if it was good music, I would make it and then figure that out.
When you see people on YouTube that are playing your songs, like you know, My Misfortune, or someone is working out that song and singing it on YouTube, what is your reaction to that?
Oh, I love it. It's absolutely great. Are you kidding me? It's wonderful.
There seems to be a lot of folks that have really honored you that way because the songs...
There really are. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Do you share like the tablature or the chords to your songs out there?
I do, but I use this weird drop C tuning that it's just, like it's very difficult to really describe, you know, the very specific kind of strumming pattern that I have and the very specific things that I'm doing with my right hand, where usually I'm just like fretting a single fret and then droning the rest of it, or 2 frets. And then there's sort of this pull off thing that I do where I sort of briefly strum everything with my right hand. And, you know, I'll totally share that with people. It's just a question of, you know, the description being difficult.
Yeah, maybe a YouTube video in your future, just
Yeah.
showing people exactly how to tune and how to do it. Now, where did that
The
style?
instructional Mike Doughty style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where did that style of playing come from?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I guess I was trying to sound like a hip hop beat, and I just had an acoustic guitar when I was like 19, and you know, that was kind of the style that came out. You know, like many things, it was a very interesting mistake.
Are you a secret drummer?
No. I mean, drum machine, but no, I'm not. You know, it takes a ton of practice that I don't do.
Yeah. When you talk about your producers and trusting your producers, I imagine you give them plenty of information, tracks, takes, your music, your vocal lines, that sort of thing. How often do you feed that into the production machine and get surprised by what comes back?
Well, when I work with Goose, a lot of what we do is I go in and he'll ask me what kind of beat I want, and I'll say, give me a house beat or a trap beat or like a, you know, sort of swinging 1989 style club beat. And he'll just sort of, you know, briefly program it, loop it, and I will improvise on a range of instruments. You know, like I'll do one guitar and then I'll do an electric guitar and then an acoustic guitar and then an electric bass and then the piano and then a synthesizer, and I'll just give him all this stuff and then split, and he will take what he likes and stitch it together into a form. And send that back to me, and I'll improvise a vocal that's all sort of nonsense syllables, send it back to him, and he'll take from that and turn that into a structure, and I'll make lyrics out of that. So that's like a very specific kind of fun thing that I do with him.
So it really is a collaborative, but he's in a studio in New York, and you're somewhere.
I'm in Memphis a lot of the time.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of the stuff I just sort of wrote outright. About half of it's outright written, and half of it is that process of improvisation and him being the editor. More of Stellar Motel is that process.
Was it the same process for While the Heart Watches?
Yeah. It's about 50-50, that process and just outright writing.
So let's talk about the new album. What is the growth that you've had from the Heart Watches from Stellar Motel?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple of things on there that really feel different. Like, I Can't Believe I Found You in That Town. Just really like kind of feels like a sort of shuffly country song. And, that it's the kind of thing that like I would not have chosen that. That's kind of what the song chose. You sort of like, you write the song and then you try and record it and then you try to do all this stuff with it that's not that. And then it turns out that the song needs whatever that is. That's an example of that. There's a song called Sad Girl Walking in the Rain, which comes from the aforementioned Week of Five Sad Songs. And that is like, it's like very sort of like rock steady, late 60s reggae feel. And I really did not want to do a genre song in that genre. I was like, that's kind of corny. But that's really what the song needed to be itself.
So you give a lot of power to the songs. You'll say, well, that's what the song needed to be, or that's the path the song chose. How do you know when it's done?
Oh, well, again, that's the wonder of a deadline, is like, this has to be done. It's like, if I don't hand it to somebody on Monday, it's not getting pressed.
Okay, so you go right up to the very edge, and it's not so much the project is done, but it just escapes.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a decent description. Yeah.
Okay, and you've chosen to put this album out on vinyl. Same with Stellar Motel and Haughty Melodic and a few others. But there are other releases that you don't. What is there a decision why one would be on the limited formats and the others wouldn't?
Well, I mean, I think it just starts at a certain time. Like 2008, that's when everybody started getting into vinyl. So from there on, it's all on vinyl. So Haughty Melodic was remastered for vinyl this year or last year. Mm-hmm. And that was because when they put it out on vinyl, they just put the CD master on vinyl. They didn't have any kind of special mastering for it. It was like, oh, people just kind of want this thing. So, all right, whatever they want to do with this odd object, we'll just put it out. And this sort of, it was really like just about being a tchotchke. It wasn't about being, an artifact for listening. And from about 2007, 2008, on was when people really started to pay attention to that. But to go back and put out the stuff I put out earlier on ATO, there would have to be that whole process again of remastering, and that's a lot of rigmarole with a record company I'm not on anymore. So that's just inherently difficult.
Okay, so so you don't have a whole lot to do with that process or that revisiting of those masters.
Well, I mean, on the contrary, I have too much with it, because they came to me. They wanted to do a 10th anniversary edition of Haughty Melodic, and I was like, "That's cool. I'll write liner notes and we can remaster it." And they were like, "What? Really?" And I was like, "Yes." So subsequently, it was put out for the 11th anniversary year, which is kind of hilarious. But it was like, "No, we're going to do this. Let's do it right." And I'm sure like that kind of nitpicky stuff, nobody likes that. Nobody but the artist likes that.
It's our 11th anniversary of the album's release, but it's our first anniversary of our intent.
Yes. Of us trying to deal with this guy. Yes, exactly.
Good. Now, when it comes to Haughty Melodic, again, it seems to, and I bring it up a lot because it was my entry point into your work, and it's the one that I tend to, at least if people are asking about your work, it's like, okay, start here.
Nice.
What would you recommend to folks who are new to your work of where to start?
I recommend Haughty for sure. That took a long time to write, took a long time to record. Really deeply involved and disciplined production work, both in terms of like arrangement and really saying like, you know what, could you write this again, or could you write a different lyric? That kind of stuff from Dan Wilson. For me, it's always like recommend Haughty and whatever the new one is.
Have you revisited vinyl, or are you particular about the type of media you listen to music on?
I mean, I love vinyl. I mean, I live 2 blocks from Goner Records in Memphis, Tennessee, one of the greatest record stores in the world. So, it takes a fair amount of effort to not spend a ton of money there like every week. But, it's great to go down there, and I sort of have a rule for myself that, if there's a record I really want on vinyl, I can't order it. I have to go to the store and hope it's there. It's just sort of a nostalgic process. That's what it was like when I was a kid. It's also great that they have so many used records, and you grab a bunch of them based on their covers, and you go sit down at their little test turntable and figure out what you like, and you end up with, all these $3.99, obscure Gil Scott-Heron records, and Ramsey Lewis Trio records and stuff like that. Just the fun of it is immense.
The discovery, being there, the smell. Yeah.
Exactly.
Is there anything in particular you are continuing to look for?
In terms of, I mean, I love sort of kind of psychedelic rock music from other parts of the world in the 70s. So like all the Zambian psychedelic rock bands and Ethiopian and Cambodian bands from the 60s, all those kind of records I'm just all over. Like there's Turkish 70s rock records, and they're so great.
The discovery of new bands, or are there bands in particular about that you'd like to see you'd like to find the vinyl copy of?
Oh, I mean, in terms of that kind of stuff, what isn't on vinyl these days? I found a vinyl copy of an album by a band called No Mercy, N-O-H, Mercy, like no Japanese theater style. San Francisco band from the 70s. And I couldn't believe I found a vinyl copy of it because, it had been out of print for a zillion years, and it just happened to be, put up on the services. But somebody took the trouble of remastering and putting out on vinyl. So incredible score.
I know we're running out of time, but perhaps the most important question, what's your favorite Simpsons episode?
Oh, the one where Homer goes to the island as a missionary, and he first of all, it's got the line "Help me, Jeebus." He goes, "I don't even believe in Jeebus," and then someone's like says something. He goes, "Help me, Jeebus," or "Save me, Jeebus," I think it is. And then later he's like, "There's no booze on the island he's on," so he's licking toads, like psychedelic toads. And Marge calls him and is like, "Are you licking toads again?" And he goes, "Well, I'm not licking toads."
Very good.
Just genius. Yeah.
Very good. Mike, thank you very much for spending some time with us. Anything else you'd like to share about the new album, the history, vinyl records? Any thoughts?
Oh, nothing that jumps to mind. I'm sure something will in, 8 hours.
All right. Well, you could ring me anytime. All right. Mike, thank you very much. Just want to remind everyone, Mike's new album, The Heart Watches While the Brain Burns, is available now. Hop online, MikeDoughty.com. And then you could also head over to patreon.com/Doughty, Doughty, and subscribe to Mike there. And you get a couple songs a week, right?
Yeah, 2 songs a week, one totally new one and one live song.
Excellent. Well, thank you again so much, Mike. Great to hear you're doing well and you're still pumping out that music. And we really look forward to hearing more and more from you.
Awesome. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Cheers, man.